Hello, fellow blade enthusiasts, and thank you for checking out another Studio DDT review. This is going to be less of a review and more of a chronicling events in regards to the JKOO custom order process, what I asked for, what was received, and my final thoughts about it. So let's get started.
I am by no means an expert in Japanese swordsmanship, nor am I an expert in swords themselves. I am merely an amateur trying to provide insight into my experiences in the hopes that they may help someone else. The swords reviewed herein were purchased with my own funds and were not sent as review samples. Not that that would change anything that I would present to you if they were. As always, when handling sharp objects, make sure to exercise extreme caution and take care. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got and get right into this thing then.
My thought process here was a simple one. When it comes to my firearms, I'm very much a firm believer in train how you fight. So I thought, well, if I'm custom ordering a sword, why can't I go a little bit deeper than that and create something that is training like I'm fighting? So my thought process was to reach out to JKOO, give them the specifications for the blade that I wanted, and then I said, please make me an iaito that I can use with the exact same koshirae. Not a duplicate. But if you're making both the shinken and the iaito at the same time, you should be able to match it to the furniture, right? So I sent over the request. I said I want it identical in all ways. I want it to be able to be swapped from shirasaya to koshirae, back and forth. Before my sword is shipped, JKOO reached out to me and they said, you know what, this isn't going the way that we had planned. Basically what they said was that they couldn't quite match up the shirasaya to the nikago of both swords, so they couldn't drill holes for it. They said that both swords would fit in it, but that was as far as they could go. At that point they said, hey, we understand we didn't quite accomplish your goal. If you don't want the iaito, you don't have to take it. And I said, well, does the blade swap out with the koshirae? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, do they store in the shirasaya? And they said, yeah. And I said, all right, that's good enough for me. It doesn't have to have the makugi hole drilled in it. Go ahead and send it. And this is truly the point where the tale of three swords begins.
If you're not interested in the nitty-gritty, here's the synopsis. I ordered a custom shinken with a matching iaito to use the same furniture. When I received both, the shinken had some flaws that I wasn't happy with. I then received a replacement shinken that was up to their standards, but it had its own furniture flaws, and more importantly, it did not swap in the way that was originally designed with the iaito. Now, if you want to see the details, keep watching. Taking a look at the original and the replacement, they appear to be identical at face value. Upon closer inspection, you have a conundrum. One has better wrapping with better diamonds, the other has clearly better samegawa. If you could combine both, you'd be in luck. Moving to the saya, we can see inconsistencies in both productions. You see a bulge that's outlined by the red square where the baki was fit, and then you can see that the seppa doesn't line up nicely with the koiguchi. This is on both productions. As you can see, the kurigata is in a different place on the second sword, but I actually prefer it. If I can request this going forward, I will, because it fits my hand better, but it's not consistent. The sayas were also slightly different length. This is pretty important when you're considering the overall reason why I purchased this project. Consistency just isn't there. The shirasaya fit the iaito blade fine, but as you can see here, when I put the non-iaito blade in there, it practically didn't fit. It's not really useful for the intended purpose. What we're looking at now is my replacement shinken. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's got amazing lamination on it, it's got a fantastic polish, it has great activity, but there's a problem. It only works with the saya that came with it itself, so I can't really utilize it for the swappable training method that I mentioned earlier. So what was wrong with the first blade? Well, if you take a look at this, it could not look more different than the second one that I received. The hamon is very, very difficult to see. The construction looks great, the folding looks great, but the polishing is just terrible. This is supposed to be the same Hazuya polish that was carried over on both swords. in addition to the imperfections that I'll be highlighting for you in a moment. The blunt iaito is made of 1065 steel, has no hamon, and is very light. It didn't quite match the curvature of the rest of the swords, and it didn't have the same kasaki either. So not quite sure what happened there, but we didn't really hit the mark. You can see that the holes in the nakago on the iaito and the first sword were relatively in alignment, but the replacement third sword was completely not going to work with the original tsuka, so that meant swapping and changing wasn't going to work. You can also see that there's basically 3 different distinct stories on all 3 blades. So the iaito and the first blade were able to share the same saya, but for some reason the third was on its own. Here you can see the difference in length. The iaito was actually the longest sword, and the saya for both the iaito and the first sword were longer. The sori was different for both of those as well, so I cannot put the third sword in the saya for the first and second sword, and vice versa. We're having a problem here. Taking a look at the kasaki of the first blade, you can clearly see the folding, but aesthetically it's just not for me. You can also see there's a rough transition at the yokote. Now, while the polish on this sword is significantly better, you can see that there's less okasaki, but better yokote termination. So you might be wondering what was so wrong with the first sword besides the polish. That's to be expected. Well, you can take a look at all of the bubbles and pockets. There were odd divots of missing material, and then there was like a debris that almost seemed to get fused to the blade in places. You could actually feel it with your fingers. So one might say, hey, that's actually pretty authentic looking in some cases, but you know what? Nothing else on this is authentic, so I'm not going for that. I want something a little bit more taken care of. Lastly, the secondary bevel. Oof, that's bad. Did I accomplish my goal? Not even close. I've got one nice shinken, and I've got one decent functional iaito. What I don't have is one set of koshirae for them both. So, mission failed, unfortunately.
So, wrapping this up, what did I learn? I learned that you can definitely ask for too much for too little. They made their best attempt at making what I had requested happen, but they were very forward in saying, we have never had this requested of us before. I didn't think that sounded like that crazy of a request, but apparently it was, and they struggled with it. In the end, did I get exactly what I was looking for? Absolutely not. I kind of got a hodgepodge of things. I got a blade that I really liked in koshirae that I really didn't care for. I got a blade that I didn't really care for in a tsuka that was good, that I could hot swap between 2 iaito. But did I end up getting a blade that I was satisfied with and an iaito that I was satisfied with that I could train exactly in identical ways and swap back and forth with? No, it didn't happen that way. So does that mean that I wouldn't place an order with JKOO again, a custom order? No, it wouldn't. I would definitely give them another shot at something. Does it mean I would try and keep the requests and requirements to a minimum? Yes. And other people have echoed this statement. They said, hey, the more that you throw out there, the more complex it becomes and the less chances they have, or I should say, the more opportunities they have at getting things wrong. So it's just food for thought. Take it with a grain of salt, as I always say, but that was my experience. I do like my shinken that I received, and I do have an iaito that I can use to train that has the same overall sori length and handle characteristics. So I got about half of what I was looking for. As always, thank you for stopping by and checking out this video. I know this wasn't particularly a review, but if you liked the commentary on the experience and you would like to see videos like this in addition to just a straight up review of specifications and overall impression, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to do different things rather than just straight reviews as well. I'd really like to include some historical aspects into the reviews, but let me know what you would like, let me know what you think I should change, and let me know how I can do better. And as always, if I miss something, I would gladly take correction and criticism as well. So again, thank you so much for stopping by and making this work, and I hope you found it enjoyable. Take care and stay safe.